With more on this, we're now joined by Michael Mostyn, the CEO for B'nai Brith Canada. Michael, thank you for joining us.
Good to see you, Michael. Thank you.
Listen, I want to begin with your reaction to the demonstration that targeted a cafe in downtown Toronto over the weekend, because from what has been posted in social media, it seems to have been very triggering for many people in the Jewish community.
Absolutely. Very troubling. This is something that a lot of people are obviously talking about within the Jewish community. Calls for the boycott of a Jewish business inside the city of Toronto. We've seen that before. Very, very disturbing. We're obviously seeing many, many demonstrations. Some of these demonstrations, actually all of the demonstrations, have elements of very disturbing paraphernalia, flags that have the emblems of terrorist organizations, chants, what the Jewish community considers to be genocidal chants, have been seen and witnessed. So all of that put together, and then obviously just disturbing, harassing, and inciting against just regular patrons that want to go out for a meal. That shouldn't happen. And yet it is happening, and we're seeing the ramping up of rhetoric, and this does have the community on edge.
On edge, because in addition to what happened in Toronto over the weekend, your organization, to my understanding, has seen a rise in anti-Semitic incidents since Hamas attacked Israel on October the 7th. What exactly have you seen? How widespread across the country?
We've seen demonstrations from coast to coast, unfortunately. We've received reports to our anti-hate hotline, and we have apps as well from the community talking about all manner of discriminatory and anti-Semitic acts, reports of mezuzahs on people's doorposts, which are religious articles, being taken down, certainly the genocidal chants at these rallies, but also other disturbing reports on university campuses and within Jewish areas. It's just wrong for parents of any community to have to think in their head sometimes, is this a good day? Is this a safe day to send my children to school? We actually witnessed that when Hamas put out a day of rage just last week, that many parents chose to keep their children home. So we greatly appreciate the physical presence of police all the way across this country. They're working very hard to make sure that all communities in Canada feel safe. But this is very disturbing. And as I mentioned before, everyone is on edge because we just see the incitement growing, the anger and rage growing, and it's just very hard for everybody.
You know, going into this, we read a tweet from Olivia Chow, who basically reminds everyone in Toronto that they need to remember people's humanity. Jewish, Muslim, Palestinian, Israeli, we need to think of people's humanity. Do we need to hear more of that type of language from the federal government?
Well, I actually hope that the federal government doesn't repeat that sort of language, because whereas she's absolutely right, we do have to remember our humanity. We do have to treat each other with civility and decency and understanding. At the same time, if the Jewish community is being targeted and a restaurant is being targeted because of Jewish ties and Jewish ownership, that should be called out. And there are many that we've heard from at B'nai Brith that were upset that it wasn't specifically singled out and said, because this is an incident of anti-Semitism, and we should be saying that loud and clear. So when it comes to issues of terror incitement, which we are unfortunately seeing on city streets, we need to unequivocally condemn this. Canada is an amazing country. Canada is a country that treasures freedom of speech and differing opinions, but there are ways to engage in those conversations, and there are red lines. We cannot incite violence against each other. We cannot try and intimidate other communities because we do not share their perspectives, but we are seeing that taking place. And if that continues long enough, and the sort of anger that we're seeing in some of these mobs, and these are mobs, that we don't want to see that escalate to an event where individuals start getting hurt. Mm-hmm. And so it's all of our job to try and lower down the rhetoric. If you have different political viewpoints, share them, express them, but do so in a way that's not inciting against your fellow neighbors here in Canada. We're seeing too much of that, and that's absolutely wrong.
And just to be clear, you want to see political leaders condemn incidents of anti-Semitism that arise, like, for example, what happened in Toronto over the weekend, according to many of the witnesses. But you also believe that that should extend to everybody, that everybody should be able to express their opinions peacefully without inciting hate, Muslim, Jew, Palestinian, Israeli.
100%. And not just. Any identifiable group should be respected in this country. Nobody should be singled out simply or blamed because of another country, things that are happening overseas, or in fact anything. We need to keep it civil in this country, but that's not what we see happening right now in this incitement taking place against the Jewish community. It needs to stop. And the rule of law has to be enforced. We're seeing Highway Traffic Act violations, for example. We are seeing any manner of anti-discrimination laws in various cities being violated that are lower threshold than the criminal code. But we need to enforce that rule of law, and we should see our leaders call out to the various authorities and say, we want to see this return to civility. Let's not let these things continue to escalate.
Michael Mostyn, appreciate the time as always. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Michael.